Hi, I'm Maya.
Hi, I'm Georgia.
And this is Ningaloo Outlook. Georgia and I are university students who share a love of books, the beach, and most of all, turtles.
Especially if they're tiny.
Travel with us deep below the waves to explore what hidden treasures lie among the reef, whales, turtles, and fauna.
A special thanks to CSIRO, Woodside, and the Ningaloo Reef research team for chatting with us about the magic of the reef.
So let's dive into it.
We are here today with Logan Hellmrich, a PhD student at Curtin University who works on the Ningaloo Outlook program. Hi Logan, thanks for coming.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime.
Always.
So your honours research is about diver-operated stereo video systems.
Yeah, bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, I know, right? Can you tell us a bit about it? Because I don't think it involves playing Harry Styles through the stereo to provide the turtles with some tunes.
No, it definitely doesn't. It does involve stereos, but probably not the stereos you expect.
So disappointed.
So diver-operated videos, we dumb it down to doves. So we call them doves. So.
Okay.
And then the stereo part is to do with the cameras. So we have diver-operated videos. So we have scuba divers who have these systems and they swim transects or underwater lines pretty much, and they count fish. So the stereo part is pretty much two cameras that are synchronized and calibrated. They allow for 3D measurements of fish. It's all to do with photogrammetry. When we post-analyze it, we can use software which we can actually click on the tip of the fish and the tail of the fish, and we can actually get the length measurement. We also get how far away it is, and we get a precise, like how precisely a value is. So that's where the stereo part comes in.
Yeah.
It's quite an accurate way of counting fish because we can actually have a permanent record that we can come back later, count the fish, and we know what's actually there because we see it. However, one downfall of that is that it does take a lot of time. There's just hours and hours of just watching fish videos, clicking, pausing, back forwards. But it is rewarding when you see a nice school of fish come past. Like, oh, that's different, or a shark comes past, or a stingray.
Yeah.
It keeps you interested then.
And so from that, can you see like what type of fish it is? And
Yep. So you do have the limits of visibility. So if the water visibility is not great, you sometimes can't really see the fish.
Yeah.
But if you're close enough to it, you're able to see what species it is. We have plenty of identification books that we can go through, and then we do process of elimination. And once you know most of the fish, it's just like it just rolls, and you can do it.
And so using this system, what do you hope to like find out from it?
So using these systems, the main goal is pretty much to count and measure the fish. So we can get like a stock evaluation of how many fish are there, how many species are there. We also look at the assemblage composition. So pretty much at each site, what numbers of species mixed with the numbers of individuals, and how is that different between each site. So sort of looking at how the community sort of is created.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
What are ROVs?
So with the doves, the stereo doves who swim in the transects, we're also using ROVs lately to pretty much pull the diver out of the water and then put the ROV in the water. So the ROV stands for remotely operated vehicle. So it's pretty much an underwater drone. So that's the most simplest way to describe it. They come in all different shapes and sizes, and then different price ranges. But they're actually really cool. It's like it's controlled from the boat. You have a controller or a joystick. You sit on the boat. You have a screen with the live feed of what the actual ROV sees, and then you can just drive around underwater. So it's if you're good at gaming, it's pretty good. It's good. You have a joystick or an Xbox controller. So
that's cool.
I just pretend like I'm playing Mario, and we're good to go. But it's a lot more expensive than that.
Fair enough. So
Imagine.
Using that, will you eventually just use ROVs instead of having actual divers in the water?
Yeah, that is the plan. That is definitely the way that the industry is going. Diving itself is quite dangerous, and especially scientific diving is quite logistically hard to do because you've got to jump through a lot of hoops, you've got to get a lot of paperwork done, and which is understandable because it is quite risky. With you got sharks, you got decompression sickness, you got all the dangers that you have with the ocean. So I think the end goal is pretty much get the divers out of the water, which some people aren't happy about because diving's pretty awesome. But at the end of the day, you're putting an ROV in which can do the same job as divers. You have a much smaller team, so it's much more cost effective, and you're eliminating all of these health and safety issues with diving.
True. But I did want to ask, have you had a chance to do dive work before? Or is that not your area?
Yep. So I've done some dive work. So my actual honours research when I used the stereos, did a direct comparison of stereo ROVs and stereo doves,
Oh, cool.
which were able to find out that both methods are comparable. Like they produce a little bit different results, but overall statistically they produce the same number of fish species, and they also show the same patterns in the differences between assemblages at different habitats and also in different at different locations and in different protection zones, so in sanctuaries and outside the sanctuaries.
Yeah.
But we also did find with that study that although they had similar results, which is great because they're comparable, the ROV was getting a lot closer to the fish. So we linked this with the fact that the ROV actually reduces some of the behavioural biases around scuba divers, because there's been studies that actually show that scuba divers, when they go down, the bubbles, or even free divers with the bubbles that come up, fish associate with spearfishing and the threat of actually being killed.
Okay.
So they flee and they run away pretty much. So we actually found the ROV got about half a metre closer to the fish. And we also saw a lot less fish fleeing, and that was inside and outside the sanctuary zone, which is quite awesome to see. So
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
the fact that we can get closer to the fish increases our chance of getting a better view of them, a better shot of them, and a better measurement.
So just with your research and talking about the rabs and doves and stuff, do you have any goals for the sustainable fishing and diving?
Ultimately, I really enjoy heading out, going for a fish with my friends and family, but I also enjoy just going for a dive and not getting anything. Just looking at the biodiversity that's down there. So, pretty much with my research and using the ROVs and getting a greater understanding of these environments, I hope that we can have. I hope that we can then make more informed decisions with management, so that we can then put the correct management actions in place to ensure the longevity of the marine stocks. So yeah, I guess my end goal would be ensure that the correct and effective management is in place, not only just for the fish and the overall health of the environment, but also to keep people's their overall marine habitat users happy, such as commercial fishers or recreational fishers.
Yeah.
But I know that can be quite a tough situation, because you've got commercial fishers who take a lot of fish, you've got recreational people who have their small limits, and then you also have people who don't even abide by the limits. That is not sustainable at all. So I think ultimately it's great to have that happy medium where everyone's happy, but at the end of the day, as long as the environment's coming out on top and we're seeing our fish stocks and our marine life lasting, I think that'd be the end goal, so we can enjoy what is on offer for years to come.
Is it dumb if I ask, like, what is sustainable fishing and diving?
What I'd class as sustainable fishing is it's fishing that ensures that the stocks are going to last. So we're not going to go out there and catch all the fish at once.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
We're actually just going to take what's needed, or what one or two fish at a time, and then there's no need to take 10 or 20 fish, because the stocks aren't going to last. We need to keep it sustainable and make sure the stocks last for years.
Okay, that makes sense.
That does
I've
make
never
sense.
heard that term used before.
No.
Yeah.
So, just heading back specifically more to the Ningaloo Reef
Yep.
itself. So, we know that you've been a part of finding short spine crown of thorn starfish, which is a bit of a mouthful.
Yes.
So, is it actually threatening the reef, or is it harmless? And why is it such an important sort of discovery?
Yep. Well, it's kind of a hard question to answer at this point. I'd say maybe. It's not at the moment, but there's potential that it might. So it is related to the crown of thorn starfish that is known for taking out coral in the Great Barrier Reef and all the outbreaks over there. So it's actually the same genus and same family. However, this one is a much shorter. It looks quite the same, but it has much shorter spines and has a different name. It's called Acanthesta brevispinus.
Wow, that is a mouthful and a half.
But so it's pretty much the more uncommon and less known version of the crown of thorn starfish.
Okay.
But they've also been known to be omnivores, so that actually studies have shown that there's actually no threat to the reef. Some studies have come out to say maybe they aren't just omnivores; they actually do prey, and there's been evidence of them actually eating scallops and soft corals. But at this stage, hard corals, which are the pretty ones which everyone cares about, are still safe. CSIRO did find these short-spined crown-of-thorns starfish at Ningaloo for the first time in 2006. And then Toad Transx in 2015 actually saw them again.
Right.
At this time, we actually saw them on mushroom corals. So there's these solitary corals that grow by themselves, but in big fields. And they're called mushroom corals because they look a bit like a mushroom.
Right.
And that's called a CSIRO. They found them on there in about 40 meters. So when we were doing my research, that was one of the habitats I actually went to.
Yeah.
So we actually, while we were doing the studies there, and actually at all the other habitats too, we were looking for these starfish to see if they still are there. And we actually came across one which we were quite surprised and excited about over a starfish. So we came back a couple of weeks later and did like a starfish mission to actually find it again.
Okay.
And we found another one which actually had one arm less. So this one had the first one had 13 arms, and the second one had 12 arms.
Okay,
so
hang on. So what do these fish actually look like?
Yeah.
it's like a full actual, looks like a normal starfish, but it's got fat stumpy arms and it's got all these little spikes all over it.
Right, because my version of a
okay.
starfish is the cute ones you can pat and see well.
Yeah.
These ones aren't as cute. But yeah, so we actually were able to find one, and then it was on the CSIRO bed. So my supervisor has this idea that they're actually eating these corals.
Wow.
Because we've seen them before in photos with dead bleached looking corals around. So we actually managed to come back a day later and put a fishing net on the end of the ROV, and we scooped it up and we brought it back up to the surface. And we actually when we had a look at it, we saw that it had CSIRO actually inside its mouth.
Oh,
and its
wow.
gut, the way it actually eats the coral is it pulls its gut out and wraps around the coral and excretes like an enzyme that then allows them to absorb the nutrients from the coral, like a liquefied coral version. So this was pretty much the first confirmed sighting of this short-spined crown-of-thorns starfish actually eating a hard coral. So it's actually, we're classing it as a coralivore now. So
wow.
a carnivore, a coralivore. There has been some recent sightings in the Great Barrier Reef of 6 in a small aggregation, and there's also been some historical sightings of them of the short-spined crown-of-thorns being seen in local aggregations of 20, living together with the bad crown-of-thorn starfish. So this does show that they are potentially in densities higher than what we actually previously thought.
Yeah.
So it's quite scary. So it's sort of that maybe. So if there was to be that potential outbreak, which there is cases that it could happen, it could lead to significantly detrimental effects on the mesophytic corals, such as the mushroom corals.
Yeah.
And because of that potential ability to have an outbreak, I'm assuming it's a closely monitor all the time type of situation, or is it
at the moment it's not, because it's only just really been found. So we're actually in the process of getting this published. So I think once this gets published, then the ball might start rolling a bit. But at the moment, the whole idea is that these are not a threat at all, and we just need to worry about the other crown of thorns. Yeah, but in reality, this threat just might be under our nose, just sort of waiting to happen.
Yeah, and especially because the Ningaloo Reef is so aesthetic. Yeah, like that's part of its charm. Pretty. It's aesthetic. So if they're eating all the pretty corals,
exactly, yeah, and it's definitely not a good PR thing. Like, as soon as it spreads that the corals are dying, everyone gets angry and gets upset, and we'll see what happens when it all gets published.
Wow. So what exactly is your PhD research?
Yeah, so I'm actually building off the research that was done from the last projects, which were actually, so I'm actually using the habitats that they found. I'm actually going to go to these individual habitats and take a deeper look and see what's actually happening in terms of the ecology and the ecosystem, the ecosystem's processes. So one of the papers that was produced by the last Ningaloo Outlook Deep Reef student, he classified all the different habitats. So we've gone through and picked out 6 broad ones, which is coral, macroalgae, rhodolith beds, which are just little rocky coral, rocky rubble, which has a coralline algae that grows on them, which is a habitat. CSIRO, which is the mushroom corals that we saw the starfish eating, as well as sponge and sand, because there's a lot of sand out there. There's a lot of nothing. So pretty much by conducting various surveys using the ROV, things such as bruvs, which are underwater videos. I'm looking to identify the ecological functions and processes that are driving the stability, maintenance, and diversity throughout these habitats. So pretty much, if these habitats and the fish species, the species and invertebrates that are within these habitats are as important as we think they are, it's essential that we gain understanding of what's actually happening there, what processes are driving changes, what processes are keeping them the same, and what's actually making each habitat different. Why are different species coming to each habitat? So, and once we have this greater understanding, we can ensure that we put the right management in place. Because once we get there, even though there's not a lot of coral out there, the sponges are quite amazing. Like Ningaloo is actually a global biodiversity hotspot for sponges. Has over 250 species of sponges, which is projected to even be close to 800 species, because everything's new to science.
Yeah.
And although again there's not really many of these corals, these sponges are still important habitats, like three-dimensional structure for juvenile fish, and even a lot of their target fish. We see a lot of coral trout, red emperor, as well as spangos that hang around these sponges. So once we know which areas are key and important, we can ensure that we push this idea to management and seeing if we can get these areas protected.
Yeah, wow.
Cool.
Very fancy.
All a bit fancy.
That's it.
In terms of the focus of your PhD, which you're currently still doing?
Yeah,
Yeah?
Still doing. I'm about halfway.
Brilliant.
Are you excited to be a doctor by the end of it?
Yes, I'm just looking for my mail coming and saying Dr. Logan. That's the main
That's going to be so nice.
You have to like frame it on your wall.
That's it.
Yeah. Don't you have to do like a 10-minute where you sort of argue?
Like a
debate.
You got like a defense.
That.
Yeah, when it comes in, and you got to do like what we also call a milestone theory, where you present everything.
Oh wow!
It's a big talk, and then everyone asks you questions at the end, and that's when it gets a bit scary.
Oh, it's a bit stressful.
Yeah.
Do you get to have notes though?
You can have notes, but it doesn't look very good if you have notes.
Fair enough. Well, I guess if you've spent so much time on it, like you have to know it inside and out.
That's it. It becomes your life. Eh?
Yeah. It's like your little baby.
Yeah.
But in terms of that PhD, one of the focuses is those mesophotic ecosystems.
Yep.
How are you thinking they're going to help us to discover more of Ningaloo Reef?
Yep. So the overall goal of my PhD is pretty much take a deeper look at the ecology of these mesophotic reefs. So do you guys even know what mesophotic is?
No, we would love an explanation.
So just to clear it up, a mesophotic habitat is a tropical or a subtropical light-dependent environment that occurs from about 30 meters deep down to the lower photic zone. So it's a low light environment, but there still is light, but it's not very light. And if you look at the word mesophotic, meso means intermediate and photic means light, so in intermediate light. So it's pretty much characterized by the presence of still having photosynthetic corals, but they aren't dominant. They are there, and there's enough light for them to grow, but they aren't dominant. A lot of other invertebrates tend to take over, such as sponges, filter feeders, algae take over, and then corals are still there, but they're definitely not the dominant.
Right. Okay.
So why did you want to study those ecosystems?
So mesophotic ecosystems globally are pretty much understudied. It's only been within the last decade or two that they've actually got a bit of attention, and one of those reasons is the fact that with the advancements in technology, we do have things like ROVs now, which can actually survey these habitats in a cost-effective way. Because previously it's been quite expensive. It's too deep for scuba divers to go down. Yeah. But as soon as you start getting more people and more equipment, everything gets more expensive. So now this stuff is readily available. It's much more cost effective to actually get out there, and we can survey them.
Yeah.
But the research in the mesophotic sort of industry is very patchy. So some areas have a lot of research. So areas such as the Atlantic and in particular the Caribbean have so much research that they can make generalizations. They can make informed management decisions. However, areas such as the Indian Ocean still remain relatively understudied, and in particular, Ningaloo itself has minimal mesophotic work. The past Ningaloo Outlook and WAMSI Node, which is the WA Marine Science Institution, were two large projects which actually have which actually consisted of most of the mesophotic research that has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Although a lot of this research just focused on mapping and identifying these habitats, looking at the patterning and distribution of these habitats. And they did sort of touch on coral recruitment, and this is mainly because of an idea called the deep reef refugia hypothesis. So this idea that these deep reefs in the mesophotic habitat, which do have corals, are somewhat sheltered from environmental effects, such as storm events or climate change, or even human effects because they're a bit deeper. So there's this idea that because they're somewhat an insurance population, they're intact still, that they can actually reseed the population. They can actually reseed the shallow population. And actually help replenish the damaged coral reefs. But it's quite a debatable topic, and it relies on something called vertical connectivity, so how connected the shallow to the deep is, and it relies on the recruits, the little tiny corals, being able to get from deep to shallow.
Yeah.
So the Ningaloo research actually suggests that that's not very likely, but it's a pretty interesting topic, and that's another reason why the mesophotic sort of getting a bit more attention, because there's a potential that it might better help these somewhat damaged areas. But one of the consensus sort of in the industry is that it's sort of a locational or a species specific thing. So it depends on the location or the species. The species got to be a generalist species that can go in both deep and shallow areas.
But I do want to know, just because of that lack of research at Ningaloo, is that kind of why you wanted to join the Ningaloo Outlook project, or?
It was just a pretty much a perfect opportunity to join. I thought it was a great, almost like a once in a lifetime opportunity working with a company such as CSIRO. Like it's a huge backing, and also being involved in the project such as Ningaloo Outlook, which is backed by BHP. Like I'm pretty lucky to be in this position. And I personally, I love Ningaloo. I got there for holidays. I've been up there before. I've had experience up there with some uni projects as well as my honours project were all up there. So I thought it's a perfect chance to actually do something that I love, and in somewhere that I already have kind of I have half an idea of what I'm doing.
Definitely.
Oh, that's
so cool.
We are all done. Thanks so much for talking with us.
That's all good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Always. Thank you so much.